Hello, and welcome to Your Sparkly Brand. We're here to inspire and empower female entrepreneurs just like you. This podcast is all about delivering no fluff, high value content that helps you to grow your business. It doesn't matter if you're just starting out and you're still DIYing everything on your own. We're giving you the tips, tools, and strategies you need to build a sparkly empire. I'm Megan Gersh, your branding and website design extraordinaire, and I'm here with my co-host and copywriting queen, Lauren Tessie. Hey, Lauren, what's up?
Hey, Meg, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm great.
You know, we're both gearing up for a little festival this weekend. Super excited for that.
Yeah, we gotta go pack after this. That's our plan, both of us.
Get all the sparkly clothes in the suitcase.
Packing up our sparkles. So did you have a sparkly moment this week?
Yeah, I had a pretty big sparkly moment this week. This past week, I made the biggest investment I've ever made in my business. So found a business mentor that I align with, signed up for, essentially it's like high level coaching with her. And it also comes with like a mastermind. So super excited to kind of like really buckle down, implement what I learned and kind of like kick my business into that next level.
Yay, that's so exciting. It just like, even just like committing to it in that way, even if you haven't started yet, like can just, I don't know, it gives you like energy.
Yeah, absolutely. Did you have a sparkly moment this week?
I was just working on this and I was like, oh, I think this is my sparkly moment of the week. As I've been, becoming more of an agency and less of the one doing the copywriting, I've had more time, which is great. And I have been spending time going through and learning it's bookkeeping, it's proposals, it's invoicing, it's all of that. It's that software, it's Dubsado. And I had a VA set it up for me. And I basically have been using it for 6 months and never really understood how it worked. And it was just kind of duct taped together and I didn't understand it. So I've been going through all their like education and all their trainings. And I am so excited for like the amount of automation I'm going to be able to implement, just like with reminders and like workflows. And it's just going to be able to, once I fully understand it, I can just set up things to just automatically happen, like asking for testimonials after delivering work and, all of that. So that feels good. And I feel like I'm fully utilizing it now.
That's awesome. I would love to like peek over your shoulder one day and take a look at like what that platform's about. Cause I've just heard so many amazing things about it.
Yeah. It has like a steep learning curve. Not that it's hard to learn, but that like it's so robust that there's a lot to learn, but it really like, it does so many things that like, I don't need other things for. Like, I don't need to pay for Calendly because it has like a whole scheduler built in. And it's like the price of it is very reasonable considering everything it does. And compared to what I was using FreshBooks before that, and it's like the same price, but this does so much more. You just have to kind of learn how to make it work for you.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So let's get into our topic for today. And we are talking about cold emailing. It's a little scary and it is a lot of work, but it's definitely the best way to find good, high paying clients when you're just starting out. Meg and I have both did this a ton. It's how I found my favorite, best clients when I was starting out. It's really like, especially as a copywriter, I can't speak to like the design side of things, but as a copywriter, you can the proof is in the pudding, right? If you can write a great cold email and get attention, you will get somebody to respond to you. And then they realize, oh, I've just seen how good they are at what they do. Like, it's just for any type of writing job, I just think cold emailing is such a good way to start. There's like no cost. Highly recommend it if you're looking to get more clients. Today, we're going to share what worked for us, what we learned from doing it, what didn't work for us, all of that. I don't do a ton of cold emailing anymore in my business, but it's one of those things I always think about. Like, okay, I need to get more clients. Oh, I want to grow. Like, that's the first thing I would go back to start doing. I just haven't done that in a year or two.
Yeah, same for me too. I mean, I did a ton of it when I was first starting my business. It was like kind of one of my daily and weekly tasks that I would kind of tackle. But yeah, I haven't sent a cold email in a few years at this point. But yeah, it totally is a great way to get in front of new people. And it's totally okay too if it is a little bit intimidating to you at first, because just like anything in business, the more that you do it, the more that you get into your systems, like it becomes easier over time. And we'll go over a few ways to kind of systemize that and make it a little bit easier on you. But the first thing that I would definitely recommend that you get in place is you need to have some kind of website or at least like a landing page so that you can point people to examples of your work. So like, obviously, if you're reaching out to somebody, if you're a designer, like you want to be showing pieces of your design or pieces of your copywriting, So making sure that your work is as polished as possible. And also that as much as possible, align it with the types of clients that you are going to be going after. So, I come from a background in the music industry. A lot of my examples in my portfolio are music based. And because of that, when I was cold emailing people in the music field, it made it a lot easier for them to like connect with those types of samples because they can already envision the type of work that I can provide for them.
Yeah, I think that's a really great point that you really should be focusing on a niche if you're cold emailing, just because that, again, it's more of that like specific connection thing that happens. Your samples are about, mine was fashion, right? When I was doing cold emailing, it was all like e-commerce fashion companies. They can look at your samples, they look at your work, and it just like weeds out everyone else. Cause we all get tons of cold emails, like as business owners, as people who work in marketing, we're all getting a lot of cold emails. But if they go, oh, but she's a copywriter for fashion, this is actually, let me read this email versus, oh, I am a SEO copywriter, blah, 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 blah. It helps you connect with the reader so much better. So I think that I would not recommend cold emailing if you don't have some sort of niche to focus on. And if it's not like an industry, maybe it's a type of work that you do. You do email marketing, you do product descriptions, that kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing to remember too is that you kind of have to think of cold emailing as like planting seeds, right? Like even if they don't need your business today, like maybe they read your emails and, something stands out to them in the email where, they might not need your services right now, but maybe 6 months from now, they'll come back to you and say like, hey, do you still do graphic design or do you still do copywriting? So you never know which one of those seeds is going to have the potential to grow into something.
Yeah. It's much more likely that somebody is going to get back to you 3 months, 6 months later than 5 minutes after you send your cold email. And that's part of it. The other thing too, is that having like copywriter in the subject, or not the subject, but in your signature of your email, then somebody like searches their email 6 months later and they're searching, oh, did a copywriter email me? Or, whatever it is. Like, again, it's just like planting those seeds, just putting things out there so people can find you when they do need you.
Yeah, exactly.
So I want to talk a little bit about kind of the mental side of cold emailing, because it can be scary, especially if you're new at starting a business, if you're new at putting yourself out there, like just sending out emails to people you don't know can be terrifying. So I like to think of it as like putting on your armor when you're cold emailing, like, okay, I'm setting my timer. I'm going to spend 2 hours cold emailing. This is what I'm going to do. And I'm not going to like let it affect my energy. If I ultimately get somebody who responds back, unsubscribe, or a slightly nasty email, I've never gotten a terribly nasty email, maybe like a little nasty, but it's just that they had a bad day, right? It's not about you. Don't take it personally. That's the best you can do, is protect your energy. And when that timer goes off, when you're done with your cold emails for the day, it's over. Don't think about it. Go back to whatever else you need to do. Another thing is get a cold emailing buddy. This is something Meg and I did. I remember pre-pandemic, we decided we'd go and sit in a coffee shop and like cold email next to each other. And it was first of all, it was great to just have somebody like who was going through the trenches with you, but it was also good to like bounce ideas off each other. I'd be like, you'd be like, oh, what do you send for, reply email or follow-up email number 3? We could like review each other's emails or share different tools or different, things we've learned. So even if it's like a virtual cold email buddy, somebody you meet online, you could do it over Zoom. It doesn't have to be in person, but just having somebody with it, going through it with you can be so helpful.
Yeah, just having that accountability in general is going to be helpful. But like also it's worth noting that cold email, when it comes down to it, can be somewhat of a numbers game. Like you're going to get a ton of no's when you are first starting. And I think that that's important to mention when we're talking about the mindset and stuff like that. Like if somebody says no to you, it's not necessarily like a reflection of you or your work. It's just like they might not need that at that time, or maybe they're just getting too many emails and they just want off of that list, or it could be any number of reasons. So just mentally preparing yourself for getting those no's is going to help you so much when you start this process. So I want to talk about a few strategies that you can use when you're actually going to cold email clients. And you mentioned this one earlier, Lauren, but time blocking can be extremely helpful. So like setting a timer for the next 2 hours, you're going to find emails and put them into your spreadsheet, or you're going to, customize those emails, whatever that is. Setting that timer is going to be so key, because if you can work undistracted for that amount of time, it's just like a task that is very, very energetically draining. And so if you have a set amount of time that you're working within, it can be helpful to kind of just work to that time goal. So the other thing that is helpful when it comes to cold emailing is batching your work. So like figuring out if you want to target a specific niche, diving into places to find those email addresses, also batching like the right writing of the actual emails that you're going to send, as well as sending the emails. Getting organized when it comes to this process is going to be so key. You can use a spreadsheet. There's also several tools that you can try out to keep track of like who has opened what email and that kind of thing. One tool that I have used in the past for automating this process is called Mixmax. There is a monthly fee associated with it. I'm not sure how much it is right now. I think it used to be about $25 a month or so back when I used it a few years ago. Again, that may have changed, but the cool thing about Mixmax is that you can input your email templates into the system. And then all you need to do is upload your spreadsheet of, your contact email, the actual email address, as well as any personalization that you want to plug into the email. And it automates everything for you. So you can say like, okay, on day one, I want you to send this contact email 1, and then 3 days later, send email 2, 3 days later, send email 3, et cetera, et cetera. It's kind of a nice way to automate that process. Other tools that I would recommend too are hunter.io is extremely helpful for finding the email address of the person that you are trying to get in contact with. Basically, the way that it works is you go to the website, you plug in, okay, I want to find people that work at Google. So you would type in google.com and it would surface any email addresses that are publicly listed of people that work at Google. It's pretty cool. The other thing that I would recommend checking out too, and I used this a little bit when I was cold emailing. I don't know about you, Lauren, but Streak for Gmail can be helpful. Basically, what I have used it for in the past was to see like if people viewed my email. So like if it got opened, which can be helpful information to see if you're testing your subject lines, if you want to see like, okay, email number 1 is not getting opened. So there's obviously a subject line problem there. So like getting that information to tweak your emails to make them a bit better can be helpful.
Yeah, I use it. I still use it to see if my have been viewed or not, but it's much more robust than that. I know there's a whole way to organize like leads and pipelines and that kind of thing. And I haven't used any of that, but I know other copywriters that do use all of the resources of Streak for cold emailing. So then another paid one that I would recommend, and here's how I used it, and that's LinkedIn Sales Navigator, which I also, again, when I was using it, there was like a 1 month free trial, which is how I started it, but it makes it really easy to not only find email addresses, but like it kind of recommends companies or people to you. I can't remember how much it cost at the time. It was like a lot for me to be spending monthly. So I would buy it for a month and then quit it for a month. Like I spend my time, when I'm batching work, just like finding companies, finding contacts at companies, pulling their email addresses, focus on that for a month, and then spend the next month cold emailing. Because I think it was maybe $60 a month, maybe $80 a month. It's not cheap, but you can turn it on and turn it off as you need. And it was really good about recommending new ways to find businesses maybe I wasn't aware of. So I would recommend that if you're kind of feeling like a little stuck as to like, who should I email? I feel like I've hit the bottom of the barrel.
Yeah. And is that something where you can extract their actual email from that platform? Or is that like you have to message them within LinkedIn?
No, you can extract their email from it. There was also there was a Chrome extension, and I would be surprised if it was still around just because it was like kind of wonky and it didn't always work. But maybe there's maybe somebody's created a better one now. There was a Google Chrome extension for LinkedIn that could find email addresses easily. Somehow they were connected. I don't know if maybe it was a part of Sales Navigator, but obviously LinkedIn is a great place. Some people just like my email address is just public on my LinkedIn because I want people to email me. I don't want them to LinkedIn message me. And some people do that probably more like small businesses versus like people that work at corporations. The other thing about email addresses, I just want to say 90% of the time it's one of like 4 options, right? It's like first name dot last name at company, first initial last name at company. Like the more you do this, the better you become at being able to like guess people's email addresses. So if you're like, this person seems so great, I really want to email them, and you like can't figure it out, just like maybe try one of those 4 options because it's probably going to be that anyway.
Yeah, that's like a little game that I used to play with myself. Like when I had Mixmax, like it would tell you like, oh, this email bounced. And I'd be like, well, let's try one of these other combinations. And it'd be like first name dot last name, and like just go through the list until one didn't bounce. And then you say, okay, I got the right email this time.
Yeah, it's fun. You get good at it. And then you think like, oh, I could probably just like email random celebrities and stuff. And, because people are usually not that creative, and especially not if they're like in a corporate environment.
Yeah, for sure. So the last thing that I want to mention is to make sure that you're paying attention to the numbers. So what percentage of your emails are getting opened? Which emails in the sequence are getting opened? Are you getting replies from people? people? How often? Are you getting calls booked on your calendar? Is there a specific email that a lot of people are replying to say like, hey, this isn't for me, like please opt me out or unsubscribe? Paying attention to those numbers is going to be so key, and tweaking your messaging, as well as, being able to double down on what works for your business.
Yeah, I think that's, sometimes when you're just starting out, you're getting caught up in the cold emailing thing. You just like want to keep going, but paying attention to those numbers, especially your open rate, just because that's all about subject line, right? If your emails aren't getting opened, it's because your subject line isn't compelling enough. And that's one of the things that we're going to talk about next is, how to create a compelling subject line. There are two other things I thought of while you were talking about this that I wanted to kind of discuss with you. The first one's pretty straightforward, and that's don't start cold emailing from a brand new Gmail address or any sort of brand new email address. You want to make sure you've established, I don't know what the correct terminology is here, but if if you're just starting your business and you just bought your domain or you just set up your, blah, blah, blah agency at gmail.com, spend a couple of weeks just sending maybe emails to your other email addresses, however you can to like genuinely use your email and just prove to Gmail that, or whatever your platform is, that you're not a robot, that you're not, just spamming people, because that will hurt your deliverability. I've heard stories about people just like spending all this time and energy cold emailing, but because they hadn't like warmed up their email address, their emails weren't getting delivered.
Yeah, I've heard similar stories of like, folks, when you really get into cold emailing, like a lot of these emails start like going to spam, or like they can get flagged as spam. And similarly, even if you have warmed up your email address, like if you're sending like a lot of cold email, like Gmail can block you, and also your domain can block you because it just thinks that you're spamming people. So especially if it's like the same email over and over, that's why the personalization is so key.
Yeah. Another thing I wanted to talk about, because I know this was a struggle for me, is like where to find people to cold email, right? Because sometimes like you're like, you have a few ideas, but you kind of get to like, you get stuck on it. So for me, again, you want to stick within your niche, you want to stick within, some sort of parameters. But for me, something that was very helpful, especially with like fashion brands, was like letting Instagram ads and Facebook ads do their job, right? I would click on everything so that they could then recommend me other businesses that were similar. And I would keep a running list, like, especially if I wasn't working at the time, I'd like screenshot something or keep a list and go back to it when I was focusing on cold emailing, just because that was, always having companies that you're excited to email. Cold email is important versus just like, here's another one. And the other part was just, I would literally just like think about products I used or stores I went to, because then I could write a better cold email if I had like a legitimate experience as a customer, would get people's attention. What sort of, since you were in a little bit less of a, advertising e-commerce kind of situation, where would you look for cold emails?
So the first place that you can look is if a company has like a company or like about us type page on their website, you can at least, sometimes those companies will list out the people that work at the company. So if that's giving you their name, that gives you essentially like a first crack at like, is it first name, last name, first name dot last name, at least that formula. The other thing that I would look at and kind of think about is like, what is the person that would hire somebody that offers my types of services? So for example, when I was cold emailing, I was asking a lot about like graphic design or website design. So somebody that might be hiring for that might be like the marketing manager or the communications manager or somebody in the marketing realm. So I would always look for somebody associated with marketing, because that's essentially going to be my best bet. If they're trying to outsource something like that, that's the person I need to get in front of. So I would first take a look at their website, see if there are any names listed there. If there weren't, I would go over to LinkedIn and search the company there to see what would pop up in terms of people that worked at the company currently, and even bonus points if I could find like the marketing manager or something there. It just makes it a lot easier. And then just good old fashioned Google. Honestly, you can find a lot of, people have their own personal websites that they list like where they work and stuff like that. Just making sure that you do as much research as you can to make sure that the person that you're contacting actually still works at the business. Because I did get a few of those people that came back being like, oh, I quit that job 3 months ago or something like that, so that does happen. But yeah, those are my tips.
Yeah, that's great. All right. So we realize this is more than one episode. There's a lot to cold emailing, and we've both done it so much that I just feel like I don't want to try and squeeze the rest of it in. So tune in next week to hear all about what you should actually write in your cold email. We'll talk about subject lines, we'll talk about personalization, and then we'll talk about the follow-up, because that's actually where the money is in the follow-up. If you want something to do this week, why don't you start figuring out a system for cold emailing? A simple spreadsheet totally works, or you could check out the tool Megan Meg suggested mix max and kind of get yourself prepped for next week when we talk about what to actually write in your cold emails. So thank you so much for listening. And until next time, stay sparkly.